Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is the special meeting of the Governing Board, May 11th, 2022, and we do have a quorum. One of our directors is not able to be here due to a medical emergency, and we wish Jim Sloan a good recovery. Okay, we have one item on the agenda, operational matters, and I'd just like to give you some preface as to what this meeting is about. This meeting has been called as a result of the request of 5 directors, chaired by Director Sloan, and also signed by Directors Vines, Davidson, Heddick, and Stanabine. They have 4 why questions of the general manager, who is in charge of these operational decisions. The request does not meet the requirements for a closed session, hence it is open to the public. The audio of the meeting is available live and later on YouTube. Summarizing their letter, these directors feel that as a part of our board oversight responsibilities, actions taken should have governing board discussion. They further are concerns that shift in policies have been made. I will remind all of that since most of the questions are pertaining to clubs, the RRMPs are the sole policy for operations to follow related to club issues. So these directors are asking for Bill Schwinn to explain what has transpired in these specific situations. I will add that not one of these directors has come to me or sent an email to have these questions answered to get the facts, nor have they met with me to request an agenda item for our workshop to cover the topics. This meeting is not a reflection of the full board, but a response to a bylaw request for a meeting from the 5 directors. I find no policy diversion, in fact, just the opposite. The staff is implementing the RRMPs as approved by the board. A full report to the community is scheduled for our June 10th workshop to identify the tax status resolution of each club. Operations were given the task, and they're completing it by meeting with individual clubs to understand their unique needs. I see no attempt from staff to kill clubs. Just the opposite. They are working to accommodate them. Our community will not be left with limited opportunities as a result. So, who is the author of this request? I read into this request personal agendas for favorite clubs, personal friendships, and independent and pet projects. Agendas should be left behind, personal agendas should be left behind when you serve as a director. The focus needs to be for the good of the Sun City West community and decisions made as a board, not individuals. This board seems to continue to struggle with their role. We set policy as a team. The general manager and staff implement that policy. Then we monitor progress. So let's go ahead and get the facts. Here is the procedure for the meeting. I will ask each of the questions posed and from the request and have our general manager respond so that you understand the why. Directors, since we only have one agenda item, please hold your questions until all of the 4 questions have been responded to and addressed by the general manager, and then each of you will have a chance to respond. So the first question deals with the Hillcrest Dancers Club deciding to dissolve their charter but remain a club who rents space from us, thereby allowing guests from outside Sun City West to attend their dances. Bill, do you want to go ahead and respond
Sure.
to that?
Thank you, Sue. By way of preface, let me just start by saying you shared this letter with me the other day that was addressed to you and signed by the 5 board members, right? So
Yes.
in my basic understanding of the letter, that there's an increased frustration about not being informed on operational issues.
Yes.
Okay? The letter also claims that actions are taken without board collaboration. Well, things happen operationally here every day that staff is involved with, that staff does the operational workings of this association. And a volunteer governing board has the oversight of policy and the general manager. There's been a big blurring of lines over the years that we are trying to focus on. But that essentially is how we operate and how we are supposed to operate. But there's a feeling that staff's disregard of the board and owner members' rights and a perception of independent shift in policy and staff inventing new rules is an accusation that's being laid out in this letter. That doesn't happen. None of these have really happened, and there's a good explanation of everything that we're going to hear today. So the operational responsibility of staff falls squarely on the enforceability of policy, which has been taking place, and now we will explain that. As your general manager, there's been some question about my communications and my communication ability. Right? I applied for this job with hundreds of other people and was successful in getting it. Prior to that, I've had a 34-year experience in government operations. I've been appointed by 2 governors in the state of Arizona to run the Arizona Outdoor Recreation Association and have done statewide planning. I've been elected for a 3-year period to be the Arizona Parks and Recreation president. You don't get there by lying. You don't get there by doing things you're not supposed to be doing. The public eye is on you and has been for 30+ years in my career. And so when I conduct my communication tactics, they're the same today as they were when I landed in this job 3 years ago. I conduct a weekly meeting with our staff. I report those findings to Sue or whoever the president is every Monday morning. How the president relays that information to the governing board is the president's prerogative. But our minutes, our meeting minutes are posted online for any and all to see, our staff meeting minutes. Okay? They're on the webpage. I participate in a weekly radio interview discussing current issues and concerns. I host a series of budget preparation forums, capital improvement project planning meetings, provide mid-year and annual reports, and as the general manager, I provide 2 seasonal Torch Academy sessions, attend monthly workshops, 5 monthly standing committee meetings, as well as the governing board meetings every month, all of which are open to the public for interaction, discussion, viewing, recording, and the minutes are posted. Our team prides itself on the transparency of this association and the condition that these amenities are maintained, especially in these unprecedented economic times. Now, moving on to your question relative to Hillcrest Dancers. Hillcrest Dancers was at one point a charter club. With this whole unveiling, per se, of the IRS tax issue that took place a little over a year ago, we were dealing with some pretty serious issues, and we addressed those. And I think we addressed those very professionally with over about 104 clubs, some of which, by the rules of the IRS and the rules of our RRPs, were in a little bit of disarray when it came to compliance. And a few years ago, we had a guest policy issue that was not in compliance with our policies. We put the train back on that track. And we're doing the same thing with clubs. So as far as Hillcrest goes, in November of 2021, the club, the Ballroom Dance Club, comes and they voted unanimously to dissolve as a charter club due to lack of owner member participation. They don't have the membership numbers in that club to support them as a charter club. Did we kill the club? No. Are we helping the club retain their recreational amenities and try to perform the dancing that they want to do? Absolutely yes. But when a very, very high percentage of that club and their club members are bringing in guests from Maricopa County who don't live here, that is a little bit of a policy violation as to why we are who we are in Sun City West. Your fees don't support Surprise, Glendale, Peoria, Phoenix residents, right? We are owner members. And so when a club is bringing in excess of owner members, that was an IRS problem, but how can we fix that? Several clubs were in that boat. And so independently, they sought legal advice. They talked to an auditor, and they were offered an opportunity to become a club not for profit, not a 501c7, not a 501c4. There's a lot of technicalities in dealing with those kinds of tax classifications. But anyway, they opted for a non-profit, not-for-profit organization, which allows them, therefore, an owner member of that organization can rent the facility. They can invite guests at that point because they're paying a very modest rental fee. Those guests can come in, they can continue to recreate, they can continue to dance at whatever schedule they'd like to do based on availability of that room. So the club initiated the dissolvement themselves. It was publicly reported at the general manager's report in December of 2021, or December 6th, 21, and also presented at the Charter Club Committee meeting on January 4th, 2022 by Casey Hooper. It was in the room today. The group is now classified again as a non-charter, yet continues to provide recreational dance programs to its members and guests in compliance with IRS and the rec center policies regarding outside guest activity. To date, we have yet to find any rec center advertising of the Hillcrest dance event that was depicted in the letter, whether it's e-news or rec center newspaper. We don't do that. So I'm not sure where this ad was seen that provoked this, but it could have been the newspaper, it could have been on the webpage, it could have been anywhere. Not us. But other clubs are also dealing with a lack of participation, member guest numbers, and conflicts with the rules and regulations adopted and approved by the governing board. Examples of such clubs are the Kiva Bridge folks, two other bridge groups, the Sun City West radio station, Country Western Square Dance, Handy Capables, Porcelain Painters, Shuffleboard, and Friends of the Library. We haven't killed these clubs. We work with them hand in hand to try to make them as compliant as they can be collectively and still utilize the facilities here that they do to perform their recreational their recreational services. Staff continues to work diligently attempting to provide viable options for these individuals and clubs to retain their desires. Again, not to kill clubs, but to accommodate their interests in a legal and policy-driven manner. Thank you.
Okay, question 2 deals with the Broadcast Club, who sought help due to concerns about not meeting the member participation requirements that we have set for the RRPs. And then the further question deals with not notifying the board of the concern, even though decision has not yet been made and the club is still working on it, as I understand it. But do you want to address that specifically?
Yes. So with the adoption of the board-approved RRPs, there are requirements that are required for charter clubs. Number of people, active participation, that kind of thing. Well, there's a couple of clubs, like mentioned before, that don't really meet that mark, right? Friends of the Library is one, and we're dealing with them accordingly. They have a lot of members, right? But they're mostly donating to that 501c3. They donate books. They don't attend meetings. It's just not a charter club. Are they a 501c3 organization? Yes. Do they contractually work with us to give us funding for the library? Yes, they do. Same kind of situation with the radio station, right? It was brought to Casey's attention that with the adoption of the new RRPs, Mr. Cohen, who's not here today on vacation, reached out to the recreation staff concerning their compliance with the upgraded rules and regulations. I never asked Gary if he minded to give up their charter. The conversation was based on his outreach to Casey regarding the radio station's struggles with club tracking software that we recently imposed and the member participation numbers, right? So Gary, at one of my Monday meetings, I went over there prior to our conversation, we were talking about the charter club and the fact that he doesn't really meet that criteria. And what happens if they lose their charter? That was it. I wasn't asking them to give it up. We're just saying, what happens if they're worried about losing their broadcast site? I said, that should not be a concern for you. You are a great public service to this organization, and I don't see the broadcasting club going away. Your status may change, but your services will still be ongoing as they currently are, rather seamless. And so he may have had a conversation with Mr. Sloan. I can't answer that. Mr. Sloan is not here. Gary's not here. Don't know. But our conversation was with the continuation status and how we can work to ensure the ongoing community service that the radio station provides. Again, similar to the agreement we have in place with similar 501c3 groups, Friends of the Library, for instance. In our recent meeting with the Broadcast Club, 2 potential options were presented for the club to review. That meeting was conducted on April 15th. To date, no club decision has been made, therefore there really isn't anything to report. So the governing board vice president, and she's also the chartered club chairman, has been made aware of this issue and notified as things advance. Staff reports on those findings. There is no stepping beyond boundaries, simply staff working, assisting, and coordinating compliance efforts to support this club's activity. Thank you.
Okay, question 3 relates to clubs supposedly being banned from having themed events and not allowed to have same-day events as rec center events, and the perceived control of club activities. So you want to address that for us?
Yes, ma'am, thank you very much. I mean, there's people in this room, I think most people on this board are Boomer members, so this is really a kind of a Boomer issue that we've been dealing with now for going on 3 years. Boomers have outgrown their room, right? They may have been outgrown their room the day they got their room. I don't know when. I wasn't here, right? But they were given late afternoon and early evening into the night use of the women's club. So it's a women's club / Boomers room, however you want to title that. It depends what group you're talking to. But the Boomers have a need for more space. A space utilization study was done prior to me landing here. Rooms got funded, groups got funded. Back in the day, it was if you had some money to contribute to the association, you kind of moved up the priority list. Pickleball courts did the same thing. The ARC facility is still paying a healthy price for their recreational facility. And so, for whatever reason, the governing board opted not to fund a Boomer building at that time. And we are still in the same boat today. At that time, I offered an option for the Boomers to utilize the social hall for some of their larger group events, be it happy hours, be it dinners, dances, or events that they want to have that don't fit into the facility that they're currently at. Poro is currently in there doing bingo at Friday night or Saturday night, one of the nights of the weekend, I don't recall. But we worked the deal out with Poro, we relocated them to open up some room for a owner-member oriented group as opposed to a kind of a Poro outside group user thing. So there may have been some miscommunication there, there's no contract or whatnot, but the policies dictate what a general manager can do. I'm limited as to what I can spend, and I'm limited as to what kind of agreements I can get into. They're 1-year agreements. If you want anything larger than that, it goes to the governing board. They are entitled to provide 3-year agreements as per policy. If you want to change that policy, you have every right to do so. But when it comes to the themed events, we were dealing with Boomers on rental fees. We're still dealing with Boomers on the appropriate space and how we deal with that. But over time, this issue came up where I believe the conversation started with us working with Boomers to come up with some kind of an arrangement where we could share schedules. Because what we were seeing, not only with Boomers, but with other clubs, the recreational events, typically holiday related, or you want to call them themed, or fall on the same day, right? St. Patty's Day, St. Patty's Day. And so if our staff are planning a holiday event on St. Patty's Day, and Boomers are doing one, and Zymergy's doing one, you got a lot of events going on the same day. And whether that's good or bad or not, it was part of the conversation. So, we don't want to duplicate if we don't have to. So the conversation ensued that, it's probably a good idea if we share schedules out in advance. Because Casey books events 1 to 2 years in advance to secure entertainment. And we also talked about the use of entertainment, as far as booking the same band within a very short period of time seemed to hurt each other's events, and we didn't want to do that. So those conversations took place. So when it came to themed events, we were talking about that, all right? So during several meetings conducted with the Boomers administration, and along with governing board directors, many issues were addressed. One specifically was hosting themed events, typically holiday or special event related. Conversations focused on the use and the contracting of the same performing artists and bands. It was agreed upon that the Boomers Club and staff would coordinate schedules to help reduce the duplication of service. Themed events were not banned, but rather encouraged as a means to allow Boomers to provide that service to their members. This white board behind this little brown thing here was used, and there were members of the governing board in this room taking copious notes on that board for the conversation we were having, and it entailed themed events. We have a photograph of that, but I'm not going to go that far, but themed events were not banned. In a quoted statement in the email dated April 1st, it's not a joke, April 1st, 2022, Casey informed the Boomers president of the following, quote, Boomers will do one themed event per month, and the rec centers will not do anything that is themed. The 2023 St. Patty's Day and 2023 Cinco de Mayo are already in the Sun City West event books, and we will work with the Boomers for future holiday events so this agreement does not contradict our terms. these very issues were discussed and documented during the meeting.
Okay, thank you. The fourth question is not related to clubs, but it deals with the timing and the process of the master plan with questions, specific questions about the funds that have been expended.
Right.
And I will just comment that the master plan is on the agenda for a presentation this Friday at our meeting, our regular workshop meeting.
And that had been scheduled for.
Right.
So,
Go ahead.
related to the master plan update, and the comments in that particular question, there was a phrase in there that said no materialized results. But at a governing board workshop on March 11th, a master plan survey results summary was provided. The results of that survey were posted online at suncitywest.com/survey results. A notification was then provided that a master plan update is scheduled for the governing board workshop on Friday the 13th. Again, no joke, sorry. Other than the 6-month contract signed with Epic Strategies, I know of no formal deadline associated with the master plan update. It's a very fluid document that is requiring time to put these things together, right? We attempted to do this 3 years ago. We got interrupted with a global pandemic. Facilities closed, we couldn't calculate numbers. The clubs didn't participate. It just stalled everything down. We are finally climbing out of that, and our staff has now implemented what I think the radio group was kind of talking about earlier, is the software package that we have now that helps us calculate user numbers, right? Numbers tell us a great story. And so we want to know if we're putting people in the right rooms, if we are utilizing our facilities the best we can, and how to move forward. So these things move on. We are in the process, or I know you know this, but we are in a pretty serious drought condition in the desert Southwest, have been for a while. So the water levels in Lake Mead and Lake Powell, as it trickles down through the Colorado River and into the Central Arizona Project, affect us all. We all use water. Golf courses use water, and we have 7 of them. And so part of the master plan and part of the planning that we do for this association has a lot to do with that water. And some of those plans change depending on what the governor does, and the subcommittee of the governor, and the Arizona Department of Water Resources. So we stay abreast of that. So that's part of our master plan update, a big part, because it's expensive. And so as we move forward, assembling this plan, we are trying to put our best foot forward in touching base with as many citizens as we can. So as far as no material results go, I would challenge that. But it is a long-range plan. It's an ongoing program, taking in many factors to consider, all right? So no one has any bad intentions in embarking in this plan, right? It's not ill-advised, it's whatever the comment was in the letter. It is a functional device that we're using for future planning. It is budgeted by the governing board, approved, and the funding is in progress. We're one year in of this particular fiscal year. I believe the budget was $150,000. With a month to go in the fiscal year, we've spent less than half of that. And I'll get to the detail on that in a minute. But the master plan is a complex undertaking, making adjustments to an existing planned community filled with thousands of residents after 40 years is a little bit more sensitive than having a blank canvas. There's a lot of precedent for specific undertaking, and our efforts are certainly not ill-contrived. Epic Strategies started a research project with us that retrieved some valuable insight, and they're being shared on May 13th. While Epic Strategies didn't end up being the best company to vision our lead, they started some research that is being fully leveraged, and they have identified someone who will play a significant role in getting Sun City West where it needs to be relative to the master plan update. Staff and independent consultants need engagement. We need trust and support of the entire board to be successful with this update. A planning process that requires open communication and significant time. Along the way, there are going to be ideas that we spend time on that don't survive. And there's going to be course corrections that are part of a master planning process to explore the best alternatives. That's all ongoing. right? Epic Strategies provided what we needed from them, essentially research and the development of a delivery of a community-wide survey that over 5,000 owner members participated in. The expense related to Epic Strategies and M3B consultants are at 49% level of the authorized spending within 1 month remaining in the fiscal year with no outstanding payments due. The governing board is welcome to review the documents provided by Epic. However, we and our other consultant don't recommend that for public release because there are some concerns that their sources are rather dated and contradictory that would leave residents having to sort things out. You can certainly see that, but a lot of the data that they're providing, unfortunately, was more than 5 to 10 years old. Michelle is an experienced and active adult industry professional and consultant, has experience with Del Webb communities, and we are very, very happy to have her, and if you will care to, her presentation on Friday will be very entertaining, and I hope you get to see that. But we're gonna bring forward additional insights regarding the master planning effort. The board openly discussed with Michelle on May 13th would be the ideal date to share her research and thoughts about the next step. So moving forward, I think we're taking the right steps forward. There's a lot of things out there that can affect this community. We are studying that, and it's just not gonna be in a pretty little book that we can tie a ribbon around and say, there's your update. It is an ongoing process that we continue to use as a planning device as to help us assemble a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, and beyond. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, comments, questions, Harry?
Go ahead.
Nothing?
I transfer to Lisa, who's got a statement.
Lisa?
President Simons, if it's okay, I would like to read Jim Sloan's opening statement, since he is unavailable this morning.
Mhm.
This is Director Sloan's opening statement. I have served as president of this association under 2 general managers. During that time, I was careful to treat the GM and staff as partners in the governing of the recreation centers of Sun City West. The staff were the professionals in the recreation, and the board was represented the community we served. This was a collaboration that worked well, and during my 2 years as president, I never had to vote on an issue. There were no ties, no 5-4 votes. Issues were discussed and solutions were found that made sense for everyone. All voices were heard, not dismissed out of hand. At our recent board meeting, the GN gave me credit for bringing the CCNR group to the rec center. I certainly had a part, but I clearly remember being in this room as a board with staff, working through the issues at hand. It was a good decision arrived at as a partnership. Policing. However, with governing board collaboration, there has been a shift. Decisions seem to be handed to us, rules implemented. There seems to be a mandate to clean up 45 years of perceived mess by bringing the train back on the tracks. There seems to be a move to take control of clubs that have been enjoyed by the residents. This comes across as heavy-handed and with consequences. This exceeds the occasional behavioral issues that arise. Instead, it is directing culture and the ability of clubs to govern themselves. Case in point is the recent edict from staff that themed events will not be allowed in certain clubs. Another concern involves enforcement of clubs' membership numbers. RRMP states that clubs must have 75 members. Clubs are being moved from charter clubs to non-entities, required to pay rent to use our facilities, which have always been provided as part of their dues paid to the association. That brings up the third issue, the perception of profit. When these clubs are removed from charter status, they are forced to pay rent. Clubs are left with the choice of disbanding or complying with the mandate. We have been told by board leadership that clubs are happy with this arrangement, but in our letter to you, we cited 2 clubs that are not happy. The Broadcast Club is a good example. The club will never be able and has never been able to been held accountable to the RRMP mandate of 75 members with 75% participation. But because of the service that the club provides to our community, perhaps an exemption should be considered by the board. The solution by staff was to ask them if they would mind giving up their charter. That statement rocked the broadcast club. The perception by the club is that the rug had been pulled out from under them. And I apologize because I was just handed this at about 7:45 this morning.
Okay, so some of those things have been.
Well,
yeah.
Bill definitely made
Fact
his,
checked.
well, he made his
Mhm.
statement.
Yep.
And clearly, Jim is making his. Let me go back.
Is that it? Is there
No,
more?
no, there's more. They were told that there would be a 1-year contract with the association. What happens after the 1 year? The association owns the property and all that is contained within. There was no mention of rent. Another example is Hillcrest Dancers. This club, like most dance clubs, has had problems filling their dances without inviting non-Sun City West residents. In the past, there has been a hesitancy to act on closing the club because the partnership of board leadership and staff felt the club would dissolve itself with attrition. The demographics of the club were mostly greatest generation. They were told they were losing their charter and would need to pay rent. Why did staff decide the Hillcrest dancers need to pay rent, but not the broadcast club? It appears to us that the association staff is moving from partnership with the board to a disregard for the board's authority. From a partnership with our community through consensus building to dictating club and thus resident behavior. It also appears that we are moving from partnership to profit from clubs. When our next president asked Casey, that would be you, Tim Irving, asked Casey Huta in our last board meeting if staff had ever considered charging clubs rent, the answer came back without hesitation that it had been discussed, but nothing had been proposed. I am not aware of who on our board knew of these discussions, and I trust that this should and will be discussed by a future board. But it isn't policy, something for staff to decide. This is a great example of policy the board gets to decide. From partnership to policing and profit, this group is dismayed by these changes. The decisions described are being made without transparency, and more importantly, without this majority of our governing board being involved. Our bylaws are clear. The governing board gives oversight to the operations of the association. This group is not interested in being a rubber stamp for staff. Conversely, we are not interested in the GM having 9 bosses. We are interested in having influence and input into the direction of our community. The residents impacted by these current policies are our friends and neighbors. This group has been duly elected to this body by our community, our neighbors. Each of us have an investment in homes and have served in leadership in our clubs. If we are informed of needs or situations in our community and have an opportunity to discuss and come to consensus, we then have ownership in the decision and can defend and explain in the decision. As the current situation stands, we are often as surprised as our residents when new information goes to the community without board involvement. And then, what do we want? This majority of the board want to be heard and not dismayed when objecting to or inquiring about a situation or policy shift.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Donna, you have some comments to make or questions from Bill's presentation?
I guess I would like to say that I have never, other than one time, heard from Mr. Sloan regarding Broadcast Club. And I kind of feel slighted that because I am chair of chartered clubs, if there's a question regarding the chartered club, I would think that I would be asked that. And like I said, Jim Sloan is the only person who ever called me about a club regarding these issues today. And at that time, I told him I was unaware of the discussion and that I thought maybe we were getting into rumors and starting things that we shouldn't be doing. And when the staff operations deal with issues with clubs, until a decision has been made, I don't see the purpose of it being brought forward. The board should be making decisions regarding suggestions that are made from operations, not being part of those discussions of what do you think of. It should be, we as a board should be then responding to, this is what we want to do. And then the board should act, not be part of, what do you think? But this is the recommendation that's being moved forward. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Ann, you have comments?
No, I'm kind of trying to take this all in. I know that there were a lot of issues that came to light last year with the sales tax issues. And there were things that had been, we've always done it this way, which is when things are done traditionally in a way, they seem to be accepted as the way that things should be done. But we learned that that wasn't correct. And I do know that we've had a lot of meetings about the sales tax and about getting our clubs compliant with the IRS regulations. I know Donna has worked more hours than she can probably count with her committee on the RRMPs. Casey has worked with those, and I know Casey is supposed to give us update in June. And some of the clubs have just fallen below the threshold. And I think some of them have worked out ways that they can do that. These facilities are for our residents, first and foremost. But if we have a place available on Saturday night that a club can rent, the Hillcrest Dance Club can rent and have outside people, which I at one time was told, and I don't know that it's fact, but I was told that they had more guests than members coming in, then they have a solution. I heard earlier this morning that they agreed 100% to disband as a charter club. And if that's so, then they can operate as a separate function. If they want to advertise in the Independent or put out notices on the bulletin board at Fry's, they can do something like that and they can bring people in. As for the broadcast club, that may take a different way of handling things because of the public service they provide. I don't know all the specifics of that one, but I do think we need to find ways that we can all cohabitate while letting our general manager and staff run the operations while we, the board, take care of the governance and the policies.
Okay, thank you. Roberta?
I'm not gonna read all mine because some of the issues have been tackled, but about the not allowing the same type of themed events. Like the Boomers Club, that's 325 members who usually attend the dances and stuff, out of a community of 25,000 or more. I think the rec center can fill up their dances without needing our 325 people. So I don't see what the issue is. You're also hurting the bands. The bands like being able to perform, the rec center, the Boomers, Z Club, other clubs. And you're hurting them making money by limiting how many times they can come up here. If the rec center has them, then somebody else can't. That's hurting the bands. And you know, they don't make a lot of money at each gig. Not like we're paying them $10,000 to perform. So I think that's a bad decision. But one of the things that has bothered me lately, yes, we have this great system where you check in. We had 325 people check into our Cinco de Mayo party last week, the Boomers. One at a time, because there was one machine. Half the group had to stand out in the hot sun to be in line to check in. And that to me, I thought was ridiculous. It was almost like we were being punished to have one machine up there at Palm Ridge. But I was also told that those membership numbers are not being shared with the clubs. When asked why they were not shared, they were told that it was confidential and privileged. To whom? Why can't, as a club, instead of filling out the treasurer or the secretary having to keep manual records of all this information, why can't they just get it from the rec center who's already collecting it? But Dory told that, oh, it's confidential and privileged, we're not allowed to share that. Who made that decision and why? You know, why can't we share information? That just seems ridiculous. The other thing that bothers me is decisions that have been made. When I was president of the Boomers in 2015 and 16, during that period, I worked with the general manager and the staff to finally get the clubs to not be charged if they stayed open to 10 p.m. That was a major victory, and now we've gone backwards and we have to be closed by 9. We're also being nickel and dime for everything. I like to point out at the part of the RRMPs is this price sheet for everything. Some of these things we used to just get for free. You know, prices have doubled and tripled for what we used to pay for using some of these extras that rec center charge for. So I just say the clubs are the backbone of this community. They're an important part of what makes Sun City West the community that it is. Let us continue to support the clubs and not destroy them.
Okay, Tim?
I'd like to hear what Sharon has to say.
Sharon?
first.
Okay.
Why?
Tim, I think you threw her for a curve.
Okay, fine. Everybody on the board kind of picks on me in regards to transportation and Kiva Bridge, because I happen to know a lot about both of them. So, my point in particular with what's going on the board is the fact that I've had numerous conversations with you, and so when you say no one's contacted you, I have emails from you in regards to closing down the discussion with the master plan. You closed down the discussion about the 501c4 when 5 of us asked specifically to have it on the next agenda. Nope, won't be there. And you called us and you told me directly, and you told me to tell the master plan committee, which included Harry and Jim, in regards to the fact that you were closing it down. Again, there's no conversation. We're not allowed to talk about it. So if I can't talk about it at the board meeting and I can't talk about it at the workshop, how would you like it discussed? And I'll go back to the transportation only because, and you don't want to hear it. See that look right there and that comment, face comment, is not okay.
It's not part of the 4 questions that you inquired
I'm sorry,
about.
but it is when someone lies to us. And it is part of this conversation. Because we're being
Sue,
told
I
things.
believe this meeting just stepped into a personnel issue.
Wait until you're called upon, please, to interrupt. Are you
Lisa,
done?
would you like to speak?
Are you done, Sharon?
No, I'm done for right now.
Okay, Tim?
President Fitzsimons.
I'm just flabbergasted. Why are clubs chartered? Why do clubs want a charter? Have you ever asked yourself that? Why? The only reason is to get priority space utilization. That's it. And if the radio club doesn't have enough people, take their charter away. Rent them the radio place for $1 a year. The solutions to these things are awfully easy. all of this discussion should have taken place at the charter club committee meetings. That's where it should have been. And any of these questions could have been directed to the general manager, and he would be glad to tell people what he just read here. I mean, what the hell are you guys doing? It's just amazing to me that and you should never call a person a liar.
Well, that's fine, but have you been lied to a number of
Sharon?
times?
No, I have not.
Okay.
Tim has the floor.
Fine.
It's just, I certainly hope that we can all get along next year. Because this type of behavior is just uncalled for. It's unnecessary. A lot of these things could be resolved with simple conversations between people. It's just amazing. So, that's all I have to say.
Now you got something to say, Harry?
Yeah,
Okay.
always had something to say.
Oh.
but I wanted the statement read first.
Oh, okay, sorry.
When I ran for the governing board, I discussed transparency and why it was necessary. And I still think that way today, and we've had a very good example in the budgeting process of where I think transparency is. We've all read the information from Frank and Slade and all of those. In our budget, excess profits go into the reserve account. How the profits are made are being questioned by the citizens, which I agree with. Example, wages are budgeted at a full 100%. Since I've been involved, we have never had 100% of full employment. But that is a mechanism that builds profits at the end to go into the reserve account.
Yep.
Is this on topic?
It's on topic.
Bill brought it up.
Bill brought it up, I'm answering. Most projects come in under budgets. So my solution is, I think the people today are much more attuned to budgets and what's going on. And when we come back to the word transparency, which is there, let's be factual on our expenses, our true income, our true expenses, and we have an expense item called the reserve account. I 100% believe in the reserve account. We have good quality people, Pete, that knows all about the reserve account, what it takes, what it needs, and let's be transparent to our citizens and show it as a line item expense. They'll understand it, but when you start playing games with income and expenses, now our citizens lose trust in us. That's what I have to say.
Okay. Anybody else that I missed? Did you want to say anything, Lisa, on your own?
Well, I think,
Or-
thank you, President Simons. I think Roberta kind of covered my topic, what I was going to talk about regarding the themed events overall. I wasn't going to talk specifically one club because for me, I was looking not just tunnel vision this way, I wanted to look broad scope in the grand scheme of things. You know, with having, 26,000 residents in this community, I would think that we can have, and we've certainly proven it by holding more than one event in an evening. This last 6 months, we've hosted, the rec centers had an event, the Boomers have had an event, Zymergy hosted an event, all in the same evening, and everybody's events did very well. And I don't, in my opinion, I think that it's great for the community when we have more than one event in an evening, and it gives people an opportunity to choose what event they would like to go to, depending on what the band is, what kind of event it is. That people want a choice. And I think that's something we certainly need to be looking at. And we should be looking, don't try to stifle the clubs and say, the rec center's gonna do, hypothetically, the rec center's going to do St. Patrick's Day and nobody else can, or the rec center's gonna do Cinco de Mayo and nobody else can, whether it be that specific day or in that week. I think our community is large enough that we can allow other clubs to host events at the same time.
Okay, I'm gonna try to summarize. Here it appears that there are,
I just would like to add one other thing, please.
go ahead.
I'd like to just make the comment about the 501c4. The idea that this community has had any discussion about the 501c4 and how it is handled as a subsidiary has not been developed as a policy by this board. So we have the general manager out here still making the comment about being a 501c4. No one is asking a club to be a 501c4. We are asking the questions about the policy of putting a club under our 501c4. We have no policy, and we haven't developed one, but we have someone working on it. So now, how does the clubs, out of the other clubs that are here, that don't fit a 7, don't fit a 3, and there's no discussion, the clubs don't even know about being under the 501c4 because we haven't had a conversation. And when we bring it up to you to put it on the agenda for the workshop, you shut us down. So again, there needs to be a conversation so this community understands what being under a 501c4 is. And the information, Mr. Schwinn, that you received from Grand, both Director Vines and myself, came to you after a board meeting and said, when you talk to Grand, would you please include us in the conversation? No one included us. We were never included in any of the conversation. I got a paper from you about what your position was in regards to what Grand did with the bridge club over there and how to apply it here to Kiva Bridge on this side. It's incorrect. It's during COVID and it's not the right numbers. And I've talked to the people at Grand. But if you'd have included us in the conversation, we could have at least explained to you what it was that they were giving you, because it's not correct.
What they gave, ma'am, just to
Okay.
try to resolve this issue. When we spoke with Grand, we simply asked for the document that they had, because they, as a governing board, created a policy that allowed their bridge playing program to allow outside guests into their venue and not the rest of their clubs. So it's an independent agreement with their bridge club.
Correct.
Okay. That's what we asked for. Yeah, I don't know if I needed to get your permission to do that.
No, I didn't ask you for my permission. I just asked to be included.
That's to make a phone call?
No, oh no, you were going to meet with them. You're okay, your letter.
Please send us the document.
Okay,
That was the only conversation that was had.
okay,
We read the document, and there it is. Clubs are independent associations. They do what they want to do. If they want to be a 501c7, that is the club's decision. That is not us hammering down on them, you should be something new. They are formed, they are 501c7s based on 40 years ago, how these things happened. I wasn't here 40 years ago.
no, was
I'm
that?
dealing with what we have today. So if a club, be it the Auto Restoration Group, they're a 501c3. I don't believe we told them to do that. I think they, as a club, independently acted upon what they thought was best for them. They want to fundraise, they've got to reimburse us $500,000 plus because they built their own facility with an agreement with us. They have a debt to pay. And they do things that are outside the community, they raise money, they help high school kids with automobiles. They qualify as a 501c3 organization. Bridge, not so much. And so each club is an individual entity. If they want to become a 501c4, they can do that. If they want to become C7, they can do that. If they want to become a C3, they can do that. The onus is on them.
Okay,
We're not telling every club to do anything other than be compliant with the IRS.
but you're also not
Okay.
giving them the information about
Sharon.
what being under the
Sharon.
501c4 is.
Sharon, wait until you're called upon
Oh
to
my God.
respond.
I will give them information if they ask.
But they don't even know to ask
Sharon,
though.
you're out of order.
What would you like me to do, Ms.
Raise your hand if you'd like to speak.
Could I speak, please?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm only suggesting that this board does not have a policy regarding putting any of the clubs under our 501c4.
And I
That-
would highly suggest that you run it through
He didn't raise his hand.
I'm sorry,
Yeah, if I'm doing it, I guess everybody has to.
let's be adults here.
Sure.
We have a committee, The committee process that is built into this system is practically flawless, right? It's owner members making decisions for owner members,
Correct.
right? Once that decision's made and the rules are written, that book's handed to us. We put on our black and white shirts and we officiate. That's our job as administrators, right? That's what we do. And so if you, as a board member, would like to see something change for Kiva Bridge or any other club that you'd like, you start at the chartered club committee level. That would transfer up. Do they need a new room? Do they need more space? That goes to the property level. And from that point in time, how much is that gonna cost? That goes to the B&F committee. And then it would probably shift to a workshop for the governing board to hear all of this. And then from a workshop, it would go to a governing board meeting for a policy change or vote. That's the system. It's not Bill. Bill, once you guys set a policy, it becomes Bill and the rest of our staff to make sure we are seeing the rules. Okay, the rule change. Good, bad, or indifferent. But that's the rule. That's how we operate.
Okay,
And I
and
like it.
in summary, I'd like to say that I'm hearing things that need to go back to committee. To me, the comments about the boomers needs to be a conversation that occurs with Casey and with the boomer leadership, the current boomer leadership, and Casey and Bill, with the issues that have come forth, because they're very specific to one particular club. So, and I'm seeing some other things that need to maybe go through, as Bill has suggested, go through committees. I am also hearing that current working efforts with particular clubs who are not resolved yet, if there are some things that would cause us to need to change our policies, in terms of contracts with them, offering another option, a service club instead of a social club, that would then come back to us, and we would then need to create a policy so that we accommodate that. So there are several different directions. I think we've been informed on some things that were erroneously commented on in the letter, and we've gotten the facts on that. I think you have been kind of informed on the process that has gone about with a lot of the questions that you had. And in terms of the 04 issue, that's being discussed and brought forward at our June meeting after a year of things going on, and whether or not there are clubs that still don't fit in, and we have to look at some other options for them. So to me, that seems like we do kind of had a plan for that process. I would encourage you, if you have questions or you have something you want to be put on an agenda, you need to come to me ahead of time and talk about what that item is, and we'll find out whether that process is going through committees, or if it has to have some investigation prior to coming to the board and make those decisions. If you have simple questions, send me an email and I will go find the answer for you, or get the person that you need to talk to find out the answer. That has not been done. None of these 4 things that you have brought up here have been handled in that way. And I chastise you for doing that, because they could have been simple answers that could have been occurred before we needed to have a public meeting like this. So at this point, are there any guest comments that you'd like to make? Lynn?
Thank you, Sue. First off, I agree with Tim on how to handle the broadcast club. That's a brilliant idea, very simple. I have to say, the feeling I'm getting here, okay, you've got 2 different dance clubs, so maybe you merge and somebody gets Friday night dances and some get Saturday night dances, since they're different types of clubs, whatever, there are things to work out. But my biggest heartache here, and I'm probably stepping into a big bunch of muck, because I don't know who belongs to what clubs, but it certainly seems not right that if there are several people on this board that belong to the Boomers Club, I think you should be recusing yourself and not be a part of this discussion and these decisions. And I would feel the same way if it were me and I were on the board and you were talking about the Clay Club. I don't belong making those final governing board decisions. That's just owner members' perception of what I see.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Yes.
I'd just like to say, in watching this, first of all, I'm on the Charter Clubs Committee. I'm on the group that meets with the craft clubs. That opportunity has allowed me to see how many different situations there are with all these clubs. You can't paint them all with the same brush, and it takes time to sit down, and they have been very good. Some things started off a little bit animosity, but when you sat down and they got to know you and you respected them, then it was easy. We get calls now with questions, things like that. We've established a communication chain, and that's more important than anything. And I want to thank Bill and I want to thank Casey for their help in trying to get this together, and I really appreciate all your hard work. But as a homeowner, I would like to once in a while go to some of these meetings when they're about the people and not about personalities on the board.
Any other comments? Okay, we'll adjourn the meeting.
When will we have personality?